What's up, boys? Today I want to talk to you all about the difficulty of Elden Ring. This has been a very popular conversation topic online, especially in my stream, especially whenever I play with certain weapons, and I'd like to kind of give my insight on it because Elden Ring came out recently, and of course this has been a topic, by the way, with all other From Software games as well, but I think because whenever Elden Ring came out, it just hit such a massively wide audience. Like, if you look at the Steam numbers, the amount of people that have played the game, it just completely dwarfs any other game that they've ever brought out, and I think for good reason. It's probably one of the best games I've ever played. So there's a lot of people out there who've come into it and it's their first From Software game, and some of those people are saying the game's too hard, and some of the people that have been playing ever since Dark Souls 1 are saying it's too easy. And today in this video I want to talk to you all about why I think both of them are right and why I think that's a good thing. So basically, this has been a topic for ever since really Dark Souls 1 came out, and you could even say Demon Souls as well, because Dark Souls has always been lauded as this is the real game. This is the hard video game. There's a lot of people, this is the Dark Souls of X type of game. This is the Dark Souls of Y type of game. And it's used as almost like a measure of difficulty and just kind of like a gold standard of difficulty. And I've always found that to be kind of funny because if you look at any speed runs for the game, you'd see that if you use certain weapons, you can kill a boss in 3 hits. It's not really that hard. However, there's a lot of people that don't understand that, and I think that's why many of them think that it's too hard. And I want to talk about my own personal experience playing my first From Software game, which unfortunately was very annoying. I was very upset about it, and you guys got to watch the entire thing back in 2018. So basically, this is what happened with me, is I first started playing Dark Souls 1 a little bit after the remastered version came out, and I went through the entire game up into Sense Fortress with the longsword, the first weapon that I had received in the Undead Asylum. And I had an absolutely horrible time fighting against those snakes with shields. It was terrible. I was frustrated, I was mad, I hated myself, and just in general I was really annoyed, right? And this is because I'm a very stubborn player. I like doing things my way, and I don't want to listen to anybody else's advice, but fortunately I did listen to one person's advice, my friend McConnell, and he told me to go to the graveyard and pick up this Zweihander. And if you ever use that weapon against the mobs in Sense Fortress, you'd know that, let's just say it made it a little bit easier. And it completely changed my perception on the game, and it opened up an entirely different perspective on how really to play the game, because I didn't know really what was possible. I didn't know the scope of tools that I really had at my disposal to solve problems in the game. And I think that is fundamentally why a lot of people think that Elden Ring is too hard, or they don't really think that the game is fair or something like that. The reason why that is I think in almost all cases, these people do not understand the tools that the game provides for you as a player. And this has been something that's true in Dark Souls as well. You have summons, you have all kinds of other, like, Bloodborne has fire paper, you have many different ways to augment and enhance your damage that can just, by the way, sorry guys, it's very, very windy here, it's why I'm wearing my hat. If balding people were a Pokemon, wind Pokemon would be their weakness. So I'm wearing a hat. Apparently there's going to be a tornado or something, so that'll be cool. And so anyway, I just wanted to mention that because I'm going to have to brush this right from my mouth every single probably 5 or 10 seconds. So anyway, what I'm really trying to get at here is that Elden Ring has a lot of tools like this. Dark Souls has had a lot of tools like this, and a lot of players don't really understand, or they don't really want to use those tools. Like for me personally, I don't like using summons for fights. I like going against the boss 1v1 because I feel like that's a more fulfilling way of beating the game. I feel like there are other people that also view the way that I play the game as not fulfilling either, because what do I like doing? I like getting the biggest bonk and then unga-bunging through the entire game and just completely stomping the shit out of it. So like my philosophy going into these games is that everybody I think that plays them has a certain different type of parameter, especially people that play them regularly, that they want to beat the game under these circumstances, and they effectively set the difficulty mode for themselves. And that's, I think, the big thing that a lot of people don't really understand with Elden Ring, is the fact that there is a difficulty slider, it's just that it's not on the menu. There is a difficulty slider in terms of using summons. It's a difficulty slider in terms of using those little ashes or like those little remembrances where it summons like monsters to help you fight the boss, and the boss fights them, or they deal damage to the boss, and so you can do more damage too. it's incredibly powerful. And then you also have, of course, like crazy good weapons. Like I've seen people use these bleed weapons that just chunk the boss's health. Like, you know, the screen's this big, the health bar's this big, and it just goes like this, you know, and it's just fucking dead. And, you know, stacking up 7 different buffs before you fight the boss, and then you just kill the boss in one hit. Or you're talking about this laser beam sword, you just shoot a beam at a guy and they just fucking die. Like, it's just incredibly fucking overpowered if you understand what the tools are that you have available to you in the game. And I think that's really where the difficulty measure comes in, and I actually feel like it's a more fulfilling way of making the game easier than just simply clicking a button on a menu like you can in a game like Witcher 3. Because the fact is that whenever you learn and you see, it's like, you know, I'm going through Sin's Fortress and I just effectively discover the, you know, NES Power Glove with the Zweihander, I feel like a fucking god. But at the same time, I know that obviously I'm making it a lot easier, and if I used a different weapon or if I used a different strategy, it could be harder. Or actually, it could be even easier than that if I used other things like Dark Bead or other types of sorceries. Sorceries have always been in Dark Souls either very bad or very good, and usually it depends on who's using them, which one it is. So I feel like the difficulty factor in the game for a new player is going to be very, very high, because obviously these games, Elden Ring, has clearly been designed with the insights of Sekiro in mind, with the insights of Bloodborne and Dark Souls 3, Dark Souls 2 in mind, especially Dark Souls 2. There are a lot of things that come from Dark Souls 2 and Elden Ring, and I think they actually took a lot of the good ideas from Dark Souls 2 and they put them in Elden Ring, which was great, like power stancing, number one. So anyway, I think that that's probably one of the best things about the games, is the fact that you do have a difficulty slider for them. And that's one of the main things that makes the playthroughs of the game so interesting, is that the way that one person is going to play through Elden Ring is going to be entirely different than the way somebody else will. And I think this is also very true in a game like Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, and Dark Souls 3 to a lesser extent. I think it becomes much less the case with a game like Bloodborne, that's much more measured, and I think that it does have a much more direct path of progression, and there aren't necessarily as many tools as you have. So like, for example, if you want to talk about, like, you know, this is what you can do in Elden Ring, this is what you can do in Dark Souls 3, this is what you can do in Dark Souls 2. I'm probably Dark Souls 2 might be bigger than Dark Souls 3 now that I think about it. You have Dark Souls 1, and then you have, again, I'm sorry, Dark Souls 1, you have Bloodborne, and then of course you especially have Sekiro. Sekiro, you only have a handful of tools, and it's really just a game that comes right down to the nuances of the combat. And the combat in the game is flawless, in my opinion, but there aren't really a lot of ways that you can go around it. I think that Sekiro is really From Software's hardest game. And the reason why it's the hardest game is that it doesn't have summons. It's that you know, you have Divine Confetti, Yasumatsu Sugar, a few other things like this. But for the most part, whenever you go through Sekiro, if you've heard somebody else that beat, let's say, the Guardian Ape or Genichiro or Ishin or somebody like that, and you talk to them about the fight, the chances are that they will have had roughly the same experience that you did with the fight. Meanwhile, with Elden Ring and Dark Souls especially, this has been the case, is that I'll have a boss fight and like I'll kill it in like one try, and I'll first try the boss, and I'll be like, wow, I'm so good. Everybody said this boss was so hard. And then I'll go up against maybe, I don't know, a bird or something like that, and I'll spend an hour malding about it while most other people beat it in a handful of tries. Why is that? It's because of the way that your play style is, and because the game offers you so many different ways to play it. And I think that's actually one of the best things about the game, because it allows for replay value. It's much easier for me to replay a game like Dark Souls 3, and I think that's why the mods in the game are so popular, and I think that will become the case with Elden Ring as well. I look forward to that very much. And the reason for that is because you have so many different ways that you can win. I think the beauty in a game like Dark Souls 3, and especially with Elden Ring now, and Elden Ring really perfected this, is Elden Ring asks you the question, get to 4. How do you get to 4? And with Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3, you can get to 4 by doing, you know, 2 plus 2, 3 plus 1, 5 minus 1, 4 plus 0, negative 8 plus positive, 12 or something like that. And there are so many different ways, or 8 divided by 2, there are so many different ways that you can go about getting to that number 4. And what I really mean by that is that you can use sorceries, you can use summons, you can use a big weapon and stagger the boss. You can use blood loss. You can use ranged abilities. You can use a lot of cheesy abilities and things like that you can do on the boss too. And there are so many different ways that you can approach a fight and approach a challenge in a game. And I think that the game, in a way, for me personally, like my goal in the game is to make the bosses and to make the game seem like the biggest joke possible. It's like a puzzle to me. How can I completely trivialize and make this game look like a total fucking joke, right? Whether it's shooting the boss through an invisible wall, like, you know, there's a wall right here and you're shooting like a projectile that has falling damage. Like, I think you can do this to Manus, and of course, obviously, the best example of this is Capper Demon. There's just a million different examples you can use, and ultimately, these kinds of things are very funny and, you know, interesting to do. I love doing these, and so I view, you know, playing the game and beating the game as a real puzzle. And other people like to play it, and they like to make it as challenging as possible. They like to, you know, not use certain weapons that they feel are like too strong in many regards. But with a game like Sekiro, I think that really you can maybe do 2 plus 2, maybe you do 3 plus 1, maybe 4 plus 0, but that's about it. You can't really solve the problem in a lot of different ways, and it does not make Sekiro necessarily an inferior game, but I think that it does interact with the amount of replay value it has after you beat it the first time. And I think also for people that are just simply not the initiated player, and I think this is what's happened with Elden Ring, is that you have people now who have been playing From Software games since, I don't know, 2015 or something like that. A new game comes out and they're like, wow, this game's easy. Well, fucking no shit, it's easy. You're really good at them. Like, you've been playing it, you put 2,000 hours into these games. How can they possibly make a game that's going to be hard enough for you to feel fulfilled by beating it, and simultaneously not just be just as insurmountable level of difficulty for a normal person? And I think that's clearly what happens in many regards, and that's why you see a lot of the personal challenge runs, soul level 1 runs, you know, like remembrance runs, all these other types of things that are propping up now with Elden Ring, any percentage runs. And you see these things happen, and I think the biggest benefit to them is the fact that every single player gets to choose what they want to do. And I think that's why these games are so good, and I think that's what a lot of people who are complaining about them don't seem to understand, is the fact that these games do have difficulty settings. You can make it harder, and you can also make it a hell of a lot easier. I think that if you watch people that say Elden Ring is too hard, these are people that as soon as they got to, you know, like they went straight to Stormvale Castle, they fucking tried to beat their head against Margit for an hour or two, they don't fucking know anything about the game, they died, this is their first Souls game, and they're frustrated as shit about it. I think that's probably 80%. I'm just throwing out random numbers, just a guess, right? But I think a lot of people run into that problem, and they don't know about the summons. They don't know about the different types of ways that you can make the fight easier. They don't know about empowering devices like, you know, exalted flesh or any sort of other like thing to give your weapon like extra damage. They don't understand about like jump attacks, a posture bar, or anything like that, because they just don't, like, why would they understand that? Fundamentally, like, the game is about discovery, and I think in that way, Elden Ring will actually become an easier game over time. And it will not become an easier game over time because From Software will feel bad for all the journalists trying to beat it. It'll become an easier game over time because all of the other neckbeards that have been playing this game every single day for 8 hours a day for the past month or so will have min-maxed all of the fun out of it, and they'll be able to tell all the casuals exactly where to go to get the weapon to kill the boss in 3 hits. So it's actually going to be easier for casual players to beat the game the longer the game is released, because more tools and more strategies and more information will come out that will trivialize parts of the game, and I don't think that's a bad thing, because all of those things that players can do are completely optional. You don't have to do this. You can just not use this ability. And I think that's what the real beauty in these games really is the fact that you can choose your own difficulty setting dynamically whenever you want, from fight to fight, from, you know, encounter to encounter, and you can do whatever the hell you want to do. And that is what I think is such a great thing about these games. And I think that we've seen this already with Dark Souls 3, is that for a lot of these guys that are really, really big fans of the game, they like seeing the hardest version of these fights. We've seen some of the Sekiro mods, but Dark Souls 3, I think, is mainly the biggest modded game. And if you play Dark Souls 3, a lot of these like Convergence mod, the Hollow mod, I did Cinders. Cinders was pretty easy, but to be fair, I played kind of a bullshit build. But you know, like many of these mods and everything will make the game harder, and so I think that you just have to wait for that to happen. And I'll certainly be really excited to play them. I've played, you know, as I said, many of the Dark Souls 3 mods. I've played many of the Dark Souls 1's mods. Daughters of Ash, in my opinion, is substantially harder than base Dark Souls 1. So it's almost like whenever I was playing Daughters of Ash, Dark Souls 1, I almost felt the same as I felt whenever I was a kid going from playing Super Mario Brothers to playing Super Mario Brothers The Lost Levels. You know, it was like, oh shit, okay, now now instead of there being 3 Goombas, there's 35, and you know, there's like bullet bills coming at you in 3 different ways, and you only have like 120 seconds to get to the end of the stage, right? And I think those are the best things about it. So I'd say just be patient, and until then, you know, keep doing your soul level 10 or 1 or, you know, club only retch runs, and wait for people to come out with some different deviations of what the game really is. But overall, I really had to say, like, I mean, bro, like, this is probably one of the best games I've ever played. Like, honestly, like, I think about it all the time. Like, that's why I keep going late on my stream. It's like, I just don't want to stop playing the game. Like, I've been having so much fun with it, man. It's been so great. And I want to talk about the difficulty of the game because, again, you know, going back to what I said at the beginning, I think that the people that say the game is too hard, they're right. It is too hard for them because they don't understand the tools that they have available. And I think the people that say it's too easy are also right because they do understand the tools that they have available, and that's compounded on the fact that they've played every single other From Software game like I have, and they know exactly what all the nuances are. It's like you see something like the Erd Tree guy, you know, the big guy with the staff. Bro, Miyazaki, you're not fooling anybody, man. That's an asylum demon. Like we know this, right? It jumps up, it falls down, it does the overhead slam, it does the sweep. It's a fucking asylum demon. And you know what? That's great. I'm happy. But it doesn't mean that whenever we see it, it makes it a little bit easier. And I think that's a really good way of reusing something in a very, you know, tongue-in-cheek way. But it's still fulfilling to fight because there are these little laser beams that come and kill you, and it is a lot harder than the asylum demon is. But all I'm saying is that, you know, you do see these patterns repeated throughout the games, and so it makes it easier for somebody who is a initiated player to immediately grasp. And I think that new players have to play catch up with those players, and they see somebody who has all that experience and all that context behind it play through the game. It's going to be a much different experience. I had that same thing happen whenever I was in Dark Souls 1, and by the time I started playing Sekiro and Bloodborne, it was a lot easier for me to pick up on things. And with Elden Ring, it was substantially more easy. So yeah, I think the game is too easy. It can also be too hard. It depends on how you come at it, what ways you choose to handicap or give yourself advantages, and I think that's one of the best things about the game. I hope more games take on that approach. I don't think every game should. I think some games are fine, just with toggleable difficulty modes, because, you know, different strokes for different folks. Everybody likes different stuff. But I'm really glad that we have a game like Elden Ring that allows you to choose and really kind of be in control of your own destiny. I think it's super fun, and I wanted to give my thoughts and everything on the difficulty of the game, where it comes from, and why I think it's a good thing. So anyway, guys, thanks a lot for watching. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.